Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Now, if you're anything like me, you like giant robots. Hell, some of your friends may complain that you watch too many giant robot shows. I can neither confirm nor deny that. But, what I can do is say that I have seen a lot. And, I think I have Mount Rushmore of giant robots down. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start off with just the easiest one. Okay, no, I'm going to start off with the easiest two, actually. So, first, I got Mazinger Z, and I got Gundam. Why do I have these two? Well, Mazinger Z is because, oh my goodness, dude, mecha anime would literally not exist without this thing. I know. Technically, Gigantor or Tetsujin 28 beat Mazinger Z to the punch. However, Tetsujin 28 was not as big of a hit as Mazinger Z. In fact, most mecha anime are still not as big as a hit as Mazinger Z. So, in other words, this basically started the genre and is still a prominent member of the... Even to this day, a spin-off of Mazinger Z called Grendizer U got made just a few years back. Like, 1 or 2. So, it came out in 1972, before any other one came out. It's basically the reason that every other mecha anime came out. It pioneered the idea of weapons being built in, the idea of someone standing in the robot. In Tetsujin, we did have the giant robot, and we did have the young boy who's friends or controls the giant robot, but he controlled it through a watch that he would say, Gigantor, please save the day. Not to that extent, but So, that's not really piloting a mecha. You know what is piloting a mecha? Getting in a detachable flight unit, which then plugs into the robot, and then the robot goes kaboom and blows up the enemy robot. Crazy stuff. On top of that, while Mazinger Z started it and basically defined what super robot shows are, there was then another show that defined what essentially real robots are. And basically almost every single mecha anime falls in between one of these two anime, which basically determines, is it a super robot or real robot show? And that, on the other end of the spectrum, is Gundam. So, obviously, I really don't need to tell you why Gundam is on the Mount Rushmore of mecha anime. It's Gundam. It is the biggest mecha anime ever, period. And on top of that, it's one of the biggest just things in Japan. Like, when you look at global sales and global yen for Bandai, keep in mind, Gundam is able to go toe-to-toe with Dragon Ball, if not surpass Dragon Ball, for multiple years. This thing hits hard. This is a box office, this is a financial juggernaut, and honestly, unironically, people have started to say that one of the reasons that mecha is failing is because people go, oh, if I don't like Gundam, I'm not gonna like mecha. So, unironically, Gundam is so big and so important that people debate whether or not it being so big and so massive is actually detrimental to the genre as a whole, because it encompasses so much of the genre. It is wild. So honestly, Gundam and Mazinger Z were going to make this list no matter what. Like, I've seen maybe like 2 or 3 other posts, not a full video on it, and guess what? Gundam is always there, and normally Mazinger Z is too. If it's not, I kind of look at you a little sideways. Next, this one, another juggernaut, I got Eva. So, why do I have Eva? Well, simply put, Eva, once again, changed the game. Now, the thing is, Eva, when you really look at it, it doesn't do anything too particularly different from past mecha anime, but it combines it in a way where it feels unique. So, yes, when you really look at it, it's got the scale and grandeur of, say, like an Ideon or a Gunbuster, but it has the serious and more mental breakdowns of, say, a gun. And it it truly did bring in a lot of people in the mecha anime. I'm pretty much the example of that. I got really big into mecha anime when Evangelion had its Netflix dub released. I watched that when I was, 14, so I was actually the exact right time to watch it. And I watched it, then I went, hey, this genre is pretty cool. And then I watched everything else. And things like Get a Robo Armageddon, Darling in the Franxx, Mazinger Z The Impact. I read Shin Mazinger Zero, Eureka 7, Code Geass, Macra, all this stuff, right? Gurren Lagann. All these things were because of Eva. And Eva is, once again, a massive mecha anime. If you ask someone to name 2 mecha anime off of their head, they're probably going to mention Gundam, Eva, and maybe a few others that I will be talking about later. And yeah, Eva is once again a massive juggernaut in the financial aspect as well. So, yeah, while I can say that it didn't necessarily do anything like, it's not like Eva created its own genre, but at the same time it kind of did, because the amount of mecha anime that come out after Eva, then you can tell they took inspiration from Eva, and they're either parodies of Eva, they either took some stuff from it, they took a character or two, and then there's all kinds of Eva flavor or Eva injection where it molds these ideas together in a similar vein to what Eva did. Obviously, the biggest example is Darling in the Franxx. Everyone's made a comment about that, but even okay, this is my my crackpot theory. I think Lisa from Mazinger Z Infinity is either Go Nagai's or his team or the writers of the show or movie. I mean, I think that Lisa is their take on Rei Ayanami. Don't ask me why. Well, no, you'll ask me why and call me crazy. But the reason I think that is because it's a family member who meets their either parent or child in an unfamiliar way due to the robot that the show or movie is presented by. It's very dishuman, but obviously it being a Go Nagai project, it obviously has a much lighter tone and a much more positive and bombastic outlook. But at the same time, I still very much see the Rei Ayanami in Lisa. And that should say something, that Evangelion affected Mazinger Z, despite the fact that Eva was affected by Mazinger. It's full circle, right? Now, who is the final member of the Mount Rushmore? And for me personally, I put Get a Robo. Get a Robo is the robot that essentially invented the concept of multiple robots that combine together into a bigger robot. On top of that, Ken Ishikawa's, works did provide a major step up in the overall narrative complexity compared to, say, a Mazinger Z. I love the Mazinger Z manga, but you can clearly tell when reading the Get a Robo manga, there was a decent narrative step up and just overall complexity added to it that wasn't there previously. On top of that, being the first combining robot, even predating Super Sentai, and then Super Sentai taking aspects of not only Get a Robo, but things that were inspired by Get a Robo, kind of changes the game. On top of that, Get a Robo, especially its manga, has had major effects, ironically enough, in other kind of niche mecha anime. So everyone knows the Gainax pose, right? That's obviously from Gurren Lagann. No, it's not. So Gurren Lagann got the Gynax pose from, well, Gynax, and Gynax got the Gynax pose from Gunbuster in particular. That's the one that popularized it. However, that pose of Gunbuster, when it crosses its arms and rises, that's based off the Getter Robo G from the Getter Robo G manga. So yeah, essentially, you can tie back most mecha anime to one of the three. Either it either has direct correlation to Mazinger Z, Getter Robo, or Gundam. It will always come back to one of those three. Oh, you like giant robots that combine? Well, guess what? That was based off Combattler V and Voltus 5. But Voltus 5 and Combattler V were based off of the combining robot aspect of Getter Robo. Like, and Getter Robo kind of just has its niche in everything, including one of the biggest mecha anime of all time, that being Gurren Lagann. And I think with that transition, talking about how Getter Robo has kind of, while Getter Robo hasn't been the main thing that has drawn inspiration, its DNA is inside almost every single notable mecha anime you can think of. But we should talk about notable mecha anime and why they didn't make the list. So, I have 4 other mecha anime that if one of them were to drop, or like be erased from existence, Thanos snaps his fingers and gets rid of one of the Mount Rushmores of mecha. I have these 4 which I think would be fighting for that spot. I got Gurren Lagann, Code Geass, Eureka 7, and Macross. So, I think I'm going to start with Macross first. Macross has had a notable development in Japan, and it's definitely been neutered by the fact that it has suffered major legal problems over here in the West. And I'm going to be real. Yes, I know the world does not revolve around North America. I am fully aware of that. I have been told that so many times. However, at the end of the day, I live in North America. So I can only look at this through the North American lens. And Macross does not have the same pull, either financially or just embedded in the public consciousness, that these other mecha anime do. So while it is a juggernaut, it's not in the same weight class as, ironically enough, its main competitor, which I would argue is Gundam. Then I got Eureka 7. Eureka 7 is notable, however, I feel that its less notable entries, particularly the High Evolution films, really did kind of hinder the overall movement of the franchise. And while it has had 2 notable shows, well, I say notable, the first season was really good, and then the second season, the sequel show, kind of sucked. But, it was still there, and it still did make a notable impact on the mecha anime community. But at the same time, it also, I feel, very heavily niches itself into a particular niche, that being kind of environmentalist, surfer culture, that kind of stuff. And while undoubtedly that makes it very fun to watch and obviously allows a lot of people to connect with it, it could just as easily alienate a lot of other people, as evident by the fact that, yes, Eureka 7 has a big following with what I would argue is the past generation of anime fans. So think the guys between 25 and 30, and it has a substantial pull with those people. However, with the younger generation, I cannot, honestly, I haven't seen, and I cannot see it having the same pull that some of the other mecha anime will have going forward. Like, for example, Gurren Lagann. I'm going to be real, Gurren Lagann has, honestly, the simultaneous least relevance and most relevance for the, I guess, honorable mentions. This is just due to the fact that, okay, 27 episodes, like some goofy OVAs and stuff like that, and also 2 movies. But the movies, it's literally been over a decade since the Gurren Lagann movies have come out, which were the last notable pieces of animation. So simply put, Gurren Lagann has not had that same backing that these other franchises have had in recent years. Like, even Eureka 7 had movies after Gurren Lagann finally wrapped up. But at the same time, that also makes it a lot easier to get into. Gurren Lagann is the easiest of all the mecha anime I've talked about here to get into. What do you watch? Oh, you watch episode 1 to 27. That's it. Oh, you want to watch the movies too? That's great. The movies are fire. They're amazing. But you don't have to. So it's very easy to get new fans to just watch Gurren Lagann. On top of that, the show holds up surprisingly well with good animation. And it came out in an era where cell shading had finally developed enough color, so it doesn't have that weird, digital animation in, like, especially the early 2000s, didn't always have the greatest color palettes, and typically had a lot of washed out colors and not as dynamic lighting. But Gurren Lagann thankfully stepped aside from that, so it's very vibrant, it's very colorful, it's very well directed, it is very good. And I know this because a lot of fans of modern day, the new fans who get on with things like your Demon Slayer, your Chainsaw Man, My Hero, stuff like that, they like Gurren Lagann more so than Eureka 7, Macross, and honestly, even Eva. I've seen more fans, I've met more new generation fans that have gotten into Gurren Lagann than I have Eva. But at the same time, Gurren Lagann, unfortunately, hasn't had the same cultural and continuous relevance that the other shows had, or continue to have. Now, speaking of continuing, this is where I get up to the highest of the high of honorable mentions. This is the one where, honestly, I debated on whether or not it should go on the Mount Rushmore instead of Get a Robo. And that was Code Geass. Now, I know if I would have made this video a few years back, probably before Rose of the Recapture came out, it wouldn't be in the same spot. Or it wouldn't have the same grip that it does. Because, obviously, Code Geass had a really good, really solid 50 episodes. Obviously, it's quite contentious, but at this point, if a show's rated high, there's always going to be one guy in the back who's like, I hate that show. And guess what? Good for you, buddy. Anyway, it is relatively critically acclaimed. A lot of people love it, and it is very popular and very financially stable. On top of that, the continuous spin-offs have expanded the world far more. So, it's not just the Lelouch's story anymore. We have Akito the Exile. That was a mainline list of movies that you could watch to, catch up on the story. Then, they released the recap films. Those obviously are not really in circumvent of the anime, but what they did allow was a continuation, because the Lelouch of the Resurrection was that continuation. It continued the story past where the TV show was. It allowed that exploration into the new start. And then, with that new start, it ran with it. I've been on this channel before, and you guys have all seen me talk about Rose of the Recapture. I don't like it that much. But, at the same time, I fully acknowledge that it is a step forward for the Code Geass franchise and distancing itself from Lelouch. It has the ability to not have Lelouch in the show. That is a big step forward for a continuing franchise, and honestly, the way Code Geass is right now kind of gives me the same feeling that Gundam does for the Universal Century. I get that vibe from it, especially since we have another Code Geass project on the way. So, what I think will happen is we will continue to get these Code Geass projects going forward and forward and forward in this main timeline. Don't be surprised in, I would say, maybe 10 years from now, we get a Code Geass, a new Code Geass anime, but this one's in a different timeline, where Suzaku got the Geass instead, or something of the sort. Think like Gundam G-Quux or something of that, right? And that's how I feel about Code Geass. Code Geass is going to be this generation's Gundam, or at least that's my perceived value of it. Will I be right? Who knows? Will I be wrong? Who knows? If you got a time machine, by all means, please. Also, if you have a time machine, could you please send me the Shin Mazinger Zero anime adaptation? That would be great. But anyway, that's all for now, folks. Just to go over one more time, the Mount Rushmore of mecha is Mazinger Z, get a Robo, Gundam, and Evangelion. I know it's kind of basic, but hey, that's what it turned out as, with the backup in case, one of them gets crazy popular, that being Code Geass. That's all for now, folks. I know this was a little bit ranty, a little bit chaotic, but at the same time, it has to do with America, so of course it's going to be a little bit chaotic. Alright, that's enough politics for me. Goodbye, all.